Hare Krishna. Today we are going to summarize chapter number 6 titled Dhyaan Yoga of Bhagavad Gita. And before we start that, let's do little Guru Vandana. Om Gyantirmarantasya Gyananjan Shalakya Chakshuru Namintam Yen Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. In chapter number 5, before we start chapter number 6, in chapter number 5, in shlok number 27 and 28, Kishan Bhagwanji had already introduced about Ashtanga Yoga. And in this chapter number 6, Kishan Bhagwanji is going to tell us the details about the Ashtanga Yoga. So let's understand what Kishan Bhagwanji says. We will summarize as to what he says. In this particular chapter, in shlok number 1 and 2, he describes the renunciation of your activities, of your senses, of your material things is equivalent to that of yoga. Yoga and renunciation, there is no much difference. That is the what he describes in shlok number 1 and 2. And then in shlok number 3 and 4, he talks about two levels of Ashtanga Yoga. One is the Arudaksha, and the second one is the Arudasya. The 8 steps in Ashtanga Yoga, let's understand those things. They are Yam, yani ki moral discipline or restraint, the Niyam or positive thoughts and positive duties, and then we have the Asana or the postures, and then we have the Pranayam or the breathing techniques, and then we have the Pratyahar or the sense withdrawals. So these first 5 steps are called the elementary stage, the beginning stage, where you start practicing when you enter into Ashtanga Yoga. So this is called the Aruraksha, the first 5 steps, the elementary stages. The last 3 steps are the highest stage, and they are termed as Arudhasya. Arudhasya, and they are Dharna or focused concentration. And then we have the Dhyaan or the meditative absorption. And lastly, we have the Samadhi or the bliss or the enlightenment. So these are the 8 steps of Ashtanga Yoga. The first 5 to repeat are the elementary ones, the entry one, and the higher level is the Arudha and they are the Dharna, Dhyan, and Samadhi. Okay, so in this chapter, we are going to learn. We are very fortunate to be amongst the devotees and understanding what Krishna Bhagwanji says in Dhyan Yoga, and we are going to learn the various steps in Ashtanga Yoga. We are going to learn the 2 stages, the elementary stage and the highest level of Ashtanga Yoga, and then how to control the mind, which is very, very important, controlling the mind. And without controlling the mind, you cannot do yoga. And then highest level of doing Ashtanga Yoga. And then how do we practice Ashtanga Yoga? How do we practice yoga? And then how to obtain the highest yoga stage? And then what are the actions of a yogi? What are the perfect actions of a yogi? And which type of yogi is very dear to Krishna Bhagwanji? We are going to learn all these things. So in shlok number 1 and 2, we have learned that renunciation and yoga, there is not much difference in the two. And we are now going to also learn that in shlok number 3 and 4, Bhagwanji talks about the elementary steps and the higher levels of doing yoga. And then in shlok number 5 and 6, he says that the controlling of the mind is very, very important. Without controlling the mind, one cannot do yoga. So very important. And he also mentions over there, if you control the mind is your friend. And if it is an uncontrolled mind, then your mind is your enemy. He makes it very clear in shlok number 5 and 6. Then in shlok number 7 to 9, he gives the symptoms of a person who is at the highest level. And this he says in shlok number 7 to 9, and he mentions over here, for one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, heat and cold, honor and dishonor are all the same. So these are the symptoms of a person who is at the highest level of yoga. And then further Bhagavanji says, a person is said to be established in self-realization is called a yogi or a mystic when he is fully satisfied by virtue of acquired knowledge and realization. Such a person is situated in transcendence and is self-controlled. He sees everything, whether it be pebbles, stones, or gold, as the same. He doesn't see any difference between these pebbles or stones or gold. He sees it with equal eye because he is in transcendence. He is in bhakti. All these material things and gold or pebbles, they do not mean anything to him. And then a person is considered still further advanced when he regards honest well wishers, affectionate benefactors, the neutral, the mediators, the envious, friends and enemies, the pious and the sinners, all with an equal mind. He does not distinguish at all between a sinner or a friend or enemy. And he doesn't also distinguish between affectionate person, a well wisher, or a person who envies a person. He sees all these with equal mind. So these are the symptoms of a person who is at the highest level of yoga. Then very important and good for us to learn from shlok number 10 to 17 how to practice yoga, what all we have to do yoga. And this is given in shlok number 10 to 17. So let's understand this thing. The first thing Bhagwanji says in shlok number 10 is we should engage our body, mind, and self in relationship with the Supreme, and we should live alone in a secluded place and should always carefully control the mind. So, very important to select a secluded place where you are not disturbed. So, that corner of the house, wherever you are living, or that corner of the place, wherever you are living, which is not frequented by other people, and you are least disturbed, choose that place and then carefully control your mind. And then you should be free from your desires. And then clearly Bhavanji says, do not have any feeling of possessiveness. I want this, I want that, I want this. Ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya, ye nahi hua, wo nahi hua. Forget about all those thoughts. And then further Bhagwanji says, to practice the yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusa grass on the ground and then cover it with the deer skin and a soft cloth, meaning make a comfortable cloth. It's very comfortable place where you can sit, and the seat should neither be very high and it should not be very low also, and should be situated in a sacred place. पवित्र जगह पे वो जगह होनी चाहिए. The yogi should then sit on it firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling his mind. The whole yoga is about purifying the mind. No ill thoughts and no sense gratifications. And the mind should be fixed at one point. Then further, Bhagwanji says in shlok number 13 and 14, one should hold one's body, neck, head erect in one straight line. One's body, neck, and head should be erect in a straight line and stare steadily at the tip of the nose. Those with an unagitated, subdued mind, devoid of fear, completely free from sex life, one should meditate upon Krishna Bhagwanji within the heart and make Krishna as the ultimate goal of life. So continuing how the yoga is to be practiced. Very important, sit straight and focus your mind on the tip of your nose, and then in your mind think of Krishna. And the further Bhagavanji says in Shlok number 15, thus practicing constant control of the body, mind, and activities, the mystic transcendentalist, his mind regulated, attains to the kingdom of God or abode of Krishna Bhagavanji by cessation of all material existence. Further, Bhagavanji says, there is no possibility of one's becoming a yogi if one eats too much. Now he is going to tell us that we should not eat too much or eat less, and we should not sleep too much or sleep less. So very important. And clearly Bhagavanji says in Shlok number 16 that have an optimum eating habit and have an optimum sleeping habit, neither less, neither more. Further, Bhagavanji says in Shlok number 17, he who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation, and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. So, this is in Shlok number 10 to 17, we have learned how to practice yoga. Going further in Shlok number 18 to 23, we learn the perfect stage of doing Ashtanga Yoga. Here Bhagwanji says that we should be steady in meditation. And this Bhagwanji says in Shlok number 18 to 23, and he says, when the yogi, by practice of yoga, disciplines his mental activities and becomes situated in transcendence, devoid of all material desires, is said to be well established in yoga. Devoid of all material desires, constraint, subdue your desires. Therefore, the Bhagavan says, as a lamp, he gives the example of a lamp. As a lamp in a windless place does not waver, so the transcendentalist, whose mind is controlled, remains always steady in his meditation on the transcendental self. In a windless place, the lamp is always steady. So, similarly, a transcendentalist, a yogi, whose mind is controlled, he is always steady in meditation and he is within himself. He is in transcendental self. And then Bhagwanji further says in Shlok number 23, he says in detail a lot about the person who is in the perfect stage of yoga. That in the stage of perfect or called a trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses, and established thus, one never departs from the truth. And upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from the material contact. So, this is the perfect state of affairs where a yogi can reach away from your desires, away from the material activities, just focusing all the time within yourself and meditating all the time, thinking of Krishna. That is the highest stage of reaching yoga. Okay, so that was Shlok number 18 to 23, the perfect stage of you being a yoga. Then going further, 24 to 26 shloks in chapter number 6, Bhagavanji talks about the methods to achieve the highest level of yoga, which we understood earlier and we read earlier. It is Arudhasya. How to reach the stage of Arudhasya, the last three stages of yoga, which is dharana or a focused concentration, and dhyan or the meditative absorption, and lastly samadhi or the enlightenment. Leave aside everything in life and just focus on Krishna Bhagwanji. There is nobody else in between. Krishna Bhagwanji and you, Krishna Bhagwanji and you. That's all thoughts, all senses, all thinking, no desires, only Krishna, 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 Krishna. That is Samadhi, the state, and the last stage, the highest stage. And this is given in the shlok number 24 to 26. So here it says, one should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with determination and faith and not be deviated from the path. Determination and faith. And then do meditation. One should abandon without exception all material desires born of mental speculation and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. Very, very important to control the mind. If you do not control the mind, you cannot do yoga at all. And this repeatedly, Krishan Bhagwanji has a number of times in this chapter number 6, titled Dhyaan Yoga. Further, Krishan Bhagwanji says in shlok number 25, gradually, step by step, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence sustained by full conviction. Do not have any doubt at all. Full faith, full conviction. And thus, the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. Connection. One connection between Krishna Bhagwanji and yourself. No thoughts. And then in shlok number 26, Bhagwanji says, from wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. It's a nature of the mind to wander about. And all over Shastras have also acknowledged it. That's very, very difficult to control the mind. But here Bhagwanji, Krishna Bhagwanji says that wherever the mind goes, bring it back. Bring it back to the lotus feet of Krishna Bhagwanji. Right? Wherever your thoughts are going, bring it back and focus on Krishna Bhagwanji all the time and control. And this, in this way, you control yourself. Okay, then when you do all these things, then you experience your own Atma, your own, the Paramatma sitting within itself. Because you are now practiced the highest level of yoga also. So you experience Brahma Bhuta, what is called Brahma Bhuta, and Sampash, Sarup Sampash, Atma and Paramatma, both. You are now experiencing that. And this is given in shlok number 27 to 30. Here it says, the yogi whose mind is fixed on me, he attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion. He realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is free from all reactions to the past deeds. Whatever sins you may have in the past, you will be free from all those things when you are focusing on Krishna Bhagwanji, because you are in the perfect stage of transcendental happiness. Further, Bhagwanji says, the self-controlled yogi constantly engages in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination, and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service of the Lord. And then further Bhagwanji says, a true yogi observes Krishna Bhagwanji in all beings and also sees every being in Krishna. Indeed, The self-realized person sees Krishna, the same Supreme Lord, everywhere. So Bhagwan Ji is saying that a true yogi, he sees Krishna in everybody. And in the Krishna, he sees everybody. And he sees Krishna in everybody. And he sees everybody in Krishna. So that is the highest level of transcendence or being at the highest level of yoga. And lastly, in Shlok number 30, he says regarding this experience, for one who sees Krishna everywhere and sees everything in Krishna, Krishna says, I am never lost, and nor is he lost to Krishna. Neither is he lost to Krishna, neither Krishna loses that person. Even Krishna is looking for such person, such a highest level of yogi. He never allows him to go here and there. Even if he goes here, there for temporarily, he will ensure that he comes back to him because he loves such a person. Okay. Then what are the actions required to become a perfect yogi? Now, these are explained in Shlok number 31 and 32. And it says, such a yogi who engages in the worshipful service of the Supersoul, knowing that Krishna and Supersoul are one, he always remains in Krishna in all circumstances. So these are the actions of a person who is at the highest level. Further, Bhagavan Ji says, he is a perfect yogi who, by comparison to his own self, sees the true equality of all the beings. He sees equality in all beings. All are equal in both their happiness and in distress. So he is not disturbed in happiness, and neither does he get disturbed in distress. For him, happiness and distress are at equal platform, what is called equanimity. We must strive to reach equanimity. During our life journey, during our path, there will be situations where we feel a lot of challenges, a lot of distress situations. And there will be also situations where we feel very, very happy. The Krishna Bhagwan says in both the stages, always remain equanimity. Neither become extremely happy when you are actually happy. Do not rejoice. Do not go out of your control when you are very happy. And when you are in distress, do not suffer because both the things are temporary. Right? So always remain in equanimity. So this is what it is. Now, Krishna Bhagwanji has told number of things that a yogi should do, or what are the qualities of a yogi, good yogi. Then Arjun, on behalf of the living beings, he asks a question to Krishna Bhagwanji. Okay, I have understood whatever you have told me, but it is very, very difficult to control the mind. It is easier to control the wind, but it's very difficult to control the mind. I cannot do that. Tell me, what should I do? I mean, it's beyond me. That is, he talks about in Shlok number 33 and 34. O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impracticable. It is not doable at all and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and unsteady. He says, the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very, very strong. And to subdue it, to control it, I think is more difficult than controlling the wind. हवा को कंट्रोल करना आसान है मगर माइंड को कंट्रोल करना बहुत मुश्किल है. To this thing, Krishna Bhagwan ji then explains. He then explains it in very beautifully in shlok number 35. It is the key thing which we can take away from this session. Two words. Kishan Bhavanji says, practice and detach yourself from the material world. Then you will be able to control your mind. So I repeat two words: practice, 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 controlling your mind. And secondly, detach yourself from the material world. When you detach yourself from the material world, there will be no desires. You will not be thinking all the time, I have to achieve this, I have to do this, I have not done that, I have to answer him, I have to meet him, and all those material things, everything. Just simply detach yourself from the material world. And then you practice and practice and practice both of these things. You will be able to control yourself. Okay, very important. Two words: practice and detachment. Okay, and then in shlok number 36, Bhagwanji emphasizes once again that practice and detachment are very important, and you have to do that, because without controlling the mind, one cannot meditate, one cannot do yoga. So in shlok number 36, Bhagwanji mentioned this thing. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. If your mind is not controlled, self-realization is very difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. And this is Kishan Bhavanji says, it is my opinion. Right? Is just to repeat, for one whose mind is not controlled, self-realization is difficult. It is not possible at all. Yoga or meditation or self-realization is very, very difficult work. Control your mind. But whose mind is controlled and who strives by appropriate means is assured of success. And this is Krishna's opinion. He says, my opinion. Okay. Now, having got the answer of mind not being able to control, and Kishan Bhagwanji gives us the two words, detach yourself and practice, then Arjun asks a second question. He says, okay, understood. Now, what happens to that person who is practicing yoga, who is practicing bhakti, who is practicing spirituality, or somehow or the other, he leaves it in between. He does not complete his spirituality or bhakti. He falls down. He goes back to the material world. For somehow or the other, some reason or other, right? So, what happens to such a person? So, this uh, is given, a reply is given by Krishan Bhagwanji in shlok number 40 to 45. He says, no destruction comes to such a person who made a genuine attempt, in spirituality and in bhakti. For somehow the reason, if he falls down, neither destruction will come to him in this world, and neither destruction will come to him in the other world, the superior world. And this is explained in Shlok number 40 to 45. Very beautifully, Kishan Bhagwanji gives confidence to the person who is practicing yoga. He explains it in Shlok number 40 to 45. So Kishan Bhagwanji says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he says, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction, either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good is never overcome by evil. The unsuccessful yogi who is not able to complete his bhakti, unsuccessful, After many, many years of enjoyment in the planets of the pious living entities, he then goes to the Swargalok, where all the pious people are living on those planets. He is then born in a family when he comes back from the Swargalok, or when he comes back from the enjoyment of the Swargalok, then he is born in a family of righteous people or in a family of rich aristocracy. Either he is born when he comes back from the Swarglok, when his tenure is over of enjoyment in the Swarglok, he comes back on the planet Earth, then he is born in a very right-minded people. He is not born in a family of corrupt people or criminals or like this who are on the wrong side of the path of life. He is born in a righteous family or in a very aristocratic family so that he can start his journey of spirituality where he left in the previous birth when he was on this uh, planet Earth. Then Bhagwanji says, and or alternatively, Bhagwanji then gives a further confidence. If unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, such a yogi, he takes his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom, very high level of Brahmans, where spirituality is there in entirety. In that family, he is born. So that certainly such a birth, Bhagwanji says, is very, very rare in this world, so that he can continue his spirituality wherever he left. So he will be born in a family of transcendentalists, where there is a lot of wisdom already. So, on taking such birth, Vacation Bhagwanji says, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life. And he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success. Then, wherever he left, wherever he had fallen down, he will get an opportunity in such a family to pursue his bhakti or spirituality further till it is completed. And he then finally reaches the abode of Krishna Bhagwanji, Golok Vrindavan Dham, and where the repeated cycle of birth and death will be finished. He will not have to take birth in any planets again. He will remain in the service of the Lord. He will remain in the service of Krishna Bhagwanji, always serving on his lotus feet. And Krishna Bhagwanji then says, by virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Automatically, wherever he had left in the previous births, it will start automatically. He will recollect. He will get a good company. He will get a good association. He will get all the facilities to pursue his bhakti. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. And then Bhagwanji further says, and when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor efforts in making further progress, being washed of all the contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many, many bursts of practice, he attains the supreme goal, Paryojan, supreme goal, Krishna Prem, Krishna ki bhakti, Krishna ki seva. That is the ultimate goal. He achieves it. And then Krishna Bhagwanji in the shlok number 46, he appreciates and he, what you call, very, very talks high about a person who has reached the highest level of yoga. He glorifies such a person of yoga. And he says, a yogi is greater than the ascetic. तपस्वी से भी ऊंचा है. The person who is practicing spirituality. Yogi is greater than the ascetic. He is greater than the empiricistic. ज्ञान योगी से भी ऊंचा है, and greater than the fruitive worker. कर्म योगी से भी ऊंचा है. So here he is glorifying Krishna Bhagwan Ji in the second last shlok of chapter number 6. He says, this yogi at the highest level, Ashtang yogi, who has completed this thing successfully, he is greater than tapasvi, he is greater than jnani, he is greater than karmi. He is higher than all these. Therefore, in all circumstances, he is a true yogi. Now, in the last shlok number 47, Krishna Bhagavan Ji talks very high above a person who has reached the highest level, and he says such a person is very, very dear to me. And this is what he says in the last shlok. And of all the yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me, he is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. And that is my opinion, Krishna Bhagavan says. So this is what we have learned in chapter number 6, titled Dhyaan Yoga. So what we learned over here, what are the various stages of Ashtanga Yoga? What is the process? How do we practice? How do we attain Ashtanga Yoga? And what are the stages? The beginning stage and the highest stage, and then controlling of the mind. We learned how to reach the highest level of Ashtanga Yoga, how to practice it, and how to obtain the highest yoga stage, and then perfect stage, and then most dearest person. What Krishna Bhagwan Ji says in the transcendentalist, who is all the time thinking of Krishna Bhagwan Ji, he is the highest level of person. And to conclude the 8 stages of Ashtanga Yoga, I'll just recollect. They are the 8 stages. The first one being the yam, or the moral discipline or restraint. Second one being niyam, or the positive duties. Then third one being the asana, or the various postures of Ashtanga Yoga or the yoga. And then fourth being pranayama, that is breathing techniques. And then 5, pratyahar, or the sense withdrawals. All these 5 are the initial stages, what we call aruruksha. And then the highest level, the last 3 parts, that is the dharana, or the focused concentration, dhyan, or the meditative absorption, and lastly samadhi, or the bliss, or the enlightenment. This is the higher level, or the highest level, and it's called arudasya. So thank you very much for being with me. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Now, with this end of chapter number 6, we have completed the Karma Yoga. The first 6 chapters are about Karma Yoga. And now we enter the Bhakti Yoga. The next 6 chapters from 7 to 12 will be all about Bhakti Yoga, and very, very fortunate that we shall be understanding Bhagavad Gita about Bhakti Yoga. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.